Hey folks, this is Killeen Hearns from Results Coaching, and I wanted to share with you today a very, very simple but important concept for leadership. One that is often overlooked, but in my view, is probably the most important thing that we need to be thinking about, or at least focusing on. And it's bigger than just what they talk about in the standard normal leadership books. And that thing, of course, is self-awareness. Because if we don't have self-awareness, then nothing needs to change. We're going to continue to bump up against each other and not have a clue about how it's impacting other people, or recognizing my own internal biases, or what I'm doing wrong, or how I can improve. All that is pretty much ignored if I don't have that self-awareness. But that's not enough, right? Because we don't live just in a world by ourselves. No man or person is an island. We obviously work with others. So that's the second thing that we need to be thinking about, is awareness of others, right? So that's number 2 down here. It's awareness of others. And this here is what we refer to as our awareness triangle, and it's what we're going to expand on over the next 2 minutes. So when we think about self-awareness and awareness of others, we've got to be thinking about how are we impacting others and how are others impacting us. And then of course, we don't only work with people, we work in an environment. And that's our third thing here. It's awareness of our environment or our organization, and how the environment is impacting on us, because it does, and then how we are impacting on the environment, because we do, especially when we get to the higher, more senior levels of leadership, if that's your goal. Now, that's all very well in theory, but how do we expand on that? What are the actual skills that we need to develop to improve not only our self-awareness, but also the awareness of others? Well, with self-awareness, feedback is key. So going out and soliciting feedback is really, really important. Taking note of what goes well for you, what doesn't go well for you, and if there are common patterns in there that you're seeing, pay attention to them. Maybe you need to be changing those. And then what are the skills that you need to develop in order to do that? And of course, how are we going to practice that? And how do we know that we're getting better? So that's that self-awareness piece. It starts with you. But then if we want to improve our interaction with others and how we impact on them and how they impact on us, we've got to be looking at core skills. And that of course focuses or centers around communication. You know, how are we building rapport with other people? What are our listening skills? Like, how effective are we at listening? Am I good at communicating what I want? You know, professionally assertive? And what about my conflict management skills? Can I deal with conflict very well? Not only me with another person, but also to mediate conflict between others as well. Of course, there's influencing skills in there, there's negotiation skills, all that falls under communication. But let's go broader than that, because it needs to go broader. What about our cultural biases? Things that we're not even aware of, that we just assume is true for other people because it's true for us. It doesn't work like that all the time. In fact, I can tell you it never really works like that. And then lastly, the thing that popped into mind are different personalities. So if they you know, the research and the literature tells us there are about 4 personality types normally, and we tend to lean towards one more than the other. We don't like to put people into boxes, but we tend to have preferences. And if I just stick in my own lane and only focus on, you know, my personality types and the strengths that come with that, I'm going to interact very well with 25% of the population, approximately, and I'm also going to be ignoring the needs of the personalities of about 75%. So these are the skills that we need to focus on if we want to improve this line here. Now, let's have a look at this line down here, because now imagine that you're in a leadership position, right? So you're leading a team or a team of teams. So you're up here looking down in this direction here. And we've got to be aware of how others are impacting the environment and how the environment is impacting others. Because it does, right? The environment is going to trigger other people, it's going to trigger you, but you are also going to influence how the environment operates. Again, think culturally there as well. Now, especially during change, when an organization is going through change, and what organization isn't, then we really need to be looking at the skills that come down here, which are team building. How do we build a team? How do you actually go ahead and build a team from scratch to be a high-performing team? What are those skills that you need? Going to be looking at change management, of course, because change is the only constant. What about leadership skills? And what about turning a strategy into operational procedures, so we can carry them out. So our team knows that what they do every day is linked to the overall organizational strategy. How are we going to move that dial? And how do they know that they're impacting that? All these skills down here. Let's move across to this line here. So we've got self-awareness here, and at the bottom we've got awareness of the environment. So this is more of an impact on me, on my environment, and my environment on me. What are the skills I need to do to be successful in my organizational environment in this instance? Well, we've got to get alignment of the vision. So do I believe what my organization is doing? Am I absolutely tied to that? Am I aligned with that purpose? If I am, it's an extremely powerful intrinsic motivator, and I'm going to jump out of bed to go into work. And it's not going to seem like work every day. It's going to feel quite purposeful, and I get energy from that. The same is true from our values. Are my values aligned to the organization? Do I agree with how things are being run here? How we treat each other? How we make decisions? What are our priorities in the organization? And then lastly, but certainly there's more, this is just the top of my head here, there's goals. So what are my goals? Are my goals aligned with the organization? And of course, this is going to be influenced by the vision and the values piece. But folks, this is all very well and good and thinking about this in isolation, but there's one thing that can make all this kind of just get really, really small. And that, because when we think about awareness, we're broadening our viewpoint. But this one thing causes us to get quite tunnel vision. And that one thing is stress. How effective are you at managing your stress? How quickly can you come back and work through adversity? And of course, what I'm talking about here is resilience. Because if we don't have a sense of resilience, all this stuff goes away. I become less aware of my impact on other people. I become less aware of my own failings. I become less aware of my impact on the environment. And these things down here can exacerbate and make like mountains out of molehills if I'm not truly aware of what's going on internally. So this really is a part of this here. That, in a nutshell, is a really, really important concept that we need to get our heads around. But then, more than a concept, we need to be taking it and turning it into skills so we can get better, our teams can get better, and the organizations in which we work can get better. Thank you, folks.